let's continue on a theme of fun exchanges on the internet. So Elon tweeted, the fundamental axiomatic flaw of the woke mind virus is that the weaker party is always right, in parentheses, even if they want you to die. And you responded at length, but the beginning is, the fundamental axiomatic flaw of the anti-woke mind is that it allows groups with historical power to play the victim by taking anecdotal examples and packaging them into conjured conspiratorial ideology that threatens to upend the power structures they have been depending on. So,
He says it all, right?
well, there's a tension there. So, yes, but both can be abused, right? Both positions of power can be abused. There's power in DEI, and there's shitty people that can crave power and hold on to power and sacrifice their ideals.
Okay, put aside universities, okay?
Damn it. Yeah, I mean,
because I'm not going to argue that universities implement DEI well, right? And I'm not going to tell you that, they need to be spending $20-some million a year on DEI positions. Mm-hmm. To me, that's insane. Do I look at the Harvard and North Carolina decision and say it was a great decision? No, because, I think having a diverse student body helps make for kids who are better prepared for the real world. Mm-hmm. But I'm not running a university, so it's not my choice. Maybe at some point in the future I will, but not now. And in terms of the corporate side of it, who's telling anybody what to do?
Well, maybe you can give me some help.
Sure. I'm here to help you, Lex.
There's an example in the AI world of a system called Gemini.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was black or whatever, people of color.
George Washington was black, Nazis were black.
So why is it when that came out, it was a big uproar, but when somebody, who was it? One of the people who were trying to fuck with me. I forget which one.
There's so many.
Yeah, but he pointed out to Elon that Elon's AI was woke when it answered certain questions. And other people have pointed out other things to Elon about Grok, however it's pronounced, that was leaning left or woke, right? And Elon's response was, oh, it'll change. It's a mistake. We're fixing it. When it happens to Gemini and Google, it's the end of the world. Look how woke they are, and it's a reflection of all their culture. Now, Google comes out and says it's a mistake, and then they dox the guy who is the product manager or whatever of AI of that product, and then they go back and look at his old tweets, right, and show that he's very left-leaning and very, DEI supportive, and that's the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world, but Google is so much dependent on trust. That trust that Google search has as objective as possible channel into the world of information. And so that brand is really important for us.
See, you're giving them too much power. And maybe I'm not recognizing the power, right? So I'll tell you a personal experience. Up until a month ago, maybe, if you put in keto gummies, Shark Tank keto gummies, into Google, it would show up with scammy ads, scam ad after scam ad. And I would get emails up until a month ago from elderly people asking me why the gummies weren't working and why the companies were charging all this money on a month-by-month basis when they tried to cancel. And they said it was the number one deal on Shark Tank of all time, right? And all Shark.
Right.
It was a mistake.
Well, there's fraud, there's mistakes, but the mistakes...
No, but why didn't Google fix it, right? This just didn't happen once, over 1 week, over 2 weeks, right? And because it was hard to fix.
Yeah.
As it turns out, I was working with them to try to find a fix. And we would both look at the same page. And if you were inside of Google, within the google.com domain, it would show one page. If you were outside of Google, it would show another. And it took us looking at it at the same time for anybody to realize it, meaning that there's a lot of technology problems that are hard to fix.
They're super complex, and we could talk about it forever with social media. The criticism towards Google, towards other companies, when they're based in Silicon Valley, there could be an ideological drift into a ideological bubble out of which the technology is created, and they could be blind to the obvious bias that's
but they've got billions of customers who are not going to. So what you're saying is the free market stops with artificial intelligence, that people don't pay attention and respond, that Google doesn't listen to the responses, that people inside of Google will ignore their own best financial interest and even their own best personal interest because they know they're going to get doxxed now on by Elon and others. And so I just don't see that. And Elon's not allowed to make those same mistakes, but Elon's allowed to make those mistakes, but Google isn't.
Oh no, Elon is 100% should be criticized for the ridiculousness of overstatements that he makes about various products. He's having a bit of fun, like you are, also. But I also believe in the free market, but it's not always efficient. There's like a delay.
It just takes time. Yeah, it's fine.
So, which is why Elon is important when calling out, I think, overstating the criticism of Gemini. But Elon and others are just...
Gemini wasn't even a fully available public product yet.
It's still a bias that resonates with people.
That's the way neural networks work, though, right? That's why there'll be millions of models, because weights and biases putting together, a neural network.
But, no. So like the Black George Washington is a correction on top of the foundation model to keep it, quote unquote, sort of safe. One of the big criticisms of all the models, frankly, probably even Grok a little bit less so, is they're like trying to be really conservative in the sense of trying to be careful not to say crazy shit.
Of course.
Because we don't know how the thing...
It's brand new and we know what happens, right? And they do it on the front end with prompts and they try to do it on the back end with the neural networks that are underneath them, right? And it doesn't always work. And that's why there's going to be millions of models rather than just, 4 foundational models or 5 that everybody uses.
Well, I guess the main criticism is you want to have some transparency of all the teams that are involved, and that this kind of, to the degree there's a left-leaning ideology within the companies, it doesn't affect the product.
But that's the beauty of
the free market.
Yeah, that's where the market corrects it, right? And not only from the outside, because everybody is going to test it. Like when YouTube first came out, when after Google bought them, there used to be different commands you could give it, right? There were line prompt commands that you could give it. And you could find all the nasty porn that got loaded before they kicked it off, right?
Right.
And it was just the nastiest shit ever. And even now, to this day, if there's some horrific, tragic event, somebody's loading it up, right?
Yeah.
No, I know that's not direct to your point of internal influence to the output, right? But people on the outside are going to check for that now, right? It's almost like the new bug contest, right? To try to find bugs in software. And then on the inside, if it's all left-leaning and all you have is left-leaning employees because, most conservatives won't want to work there, then again, that's self-correcting as well.
That's the hope, but it can self-correct in different kinds of ways. You can have a different company that competes and becomes more conservative. I mean, my worry is that it's kind of becomes like 2 different worlds where there's like...
It already is.
No, come on. Don't give up.
Oh, I'm not giving up. So where does this go is the question.
Yeah.
Right. What happens next? And I mean, going back, I've been in so many PC revolutions, right, or evolutions, where porn was the big issue, right? Now we don't even talk about porn being an issue, even though, if every post on Twitter now has, link in bio for a porn post, right? We don't even think that's a negative anymore. That's just an accepted thing. And now it's become very where your politics on Twitter. But again, as you extend that and things grow, as AI models become more efficient and trainable for a lot less money, or even locally on a PC or a phone, we're all going to have our own models. And there's going to be millions and millions and millions of models, and not just foundational models. Now, maybe they're built some on open source. Maybe, it'll be copy pasta where you can just cut and paste and create your own model and train it yourself. Maybe it'll be mixture of experts where, maybe it'll be a meta front end. Like we're working on a project where we take 30 different AI models and there's just a meta search engine where it searches all of them and you can compare all the outputs and see what you think is the best, kind of like a search engine, right? Because you might get, is DEI good, right? Is the COVID vaccine good, right? You're going to get a variety of outputs, and you have to make that decision yourself. That's what I think is going to happen with AI as well, because I think brands, there's no way the Mayo Clinic and the Harvard Medical School are just going to contribute all their IP to Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever. It's going to have to be licensed, or they're going to do their own.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very hopeful message. But that said, human history doesn't always autocorrect really quickly, self-correct really quickly. Sometimes you get into this very painful things. You have Stalin, you have Hitler. You can get to places very quickly where the ideological thing just builds on itself, and
but Twitter is not real world. There's 27.
Twitter is not real world. That's true.
Yeah.
Yes, but you could still have a nation captured by an ideology. I think America has been really good at having these two, blue and red, always at tension with each other, dividing the populace, and in the process of doing that, figuring stuff out, like almost like playing devil's advocate, but like in real life.
And that's fair and that's right. As opposed to Pravda telling you everything you want to know,
Yes.
right? And everybody believing it because there's control of everything, right? And so going back to what you said earlier, people in Russia don't think it, invading Ukraine, it's a lot of them see it as a positive, right? I'm sure you have relatives and friends who think, it's the best thing that ever happened, right? Because they believe in Putin.
They're denazifying Ukraine. They're removing the Nazis from Ukraine.
Right, because that's exactly what Putin said. And, we don't have one uniform media outlet. That's the difference. Even though people like to talk about mainstream media as being the source of a lot of the friction, there is no such thing as mainstream media anymore. Fox is the biggest cable news channel with the biggest audience, and they call everybody else mainstream media. It's insane the things that we accept from our sources of information. To me, that's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is trying to figure out what is free speech and what is the line of tolerance for free speech. And at what point does hateful free speech crowd out other people, right? Putin's the master of that. You're going to jail or you're going to be dead if you disagree, right? Now, God help us if we ever get to that point here, but the person who controls the algorithm controls the world, right? And if you are committed to one specific platform as your singular source of information or affiliated platforms, then whoever controls the algorithm or the programming there controls you in a lot of respects. And I think that's where our biggest problem has been. We get people attached to specific platforms and apps and media outlets, and they become part of that team. And they identify as such, and either you're part of the team or you're not. And that to me is the fundamental problem. It's not woke ideology, because I never felt any pressure to make the choices that I've chosen, in including diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I've never forced anybody or told anybody to do it. I just said, here's my experiences. Whenever I've talked to people who talk about the woke ideology, no one ever got forced. I mean, if you look at Dylan McDermott, right? Mm-hmm. If there was a way to gauge the number of impressions that she had, right, and where they sourced from, I'd be willing to bet any amount of money that 90% plus of the impressions and discussions of Dylan McDermott were on right-leaning media.
Several things, actually. Let's even go there. You've gotten a bit of a beef with, again, fun with Jordan Peterson about
That's
this.
the guy whose name I couldn't think of, yeah.
So the topic there was the gender transition and Dylan Mulvaney. Can you explain the nature of the beef? I mean, it's an interesting claim you're making that most of the people who are concerned about this are conservatives.
Yeah, the point is that if you looked at impressions, Like when you run an ad, you're curious about impressions and who sees them, right? But if you look at the impressions related to Dylan McDermott, I would, like I just said, I'd bet 90% or more were in conservative media. And, I don't know how many followers she had, 250,000 followers or whatever when the Bud Light ad came out. And if it weren't for Kid Rock shooting, guns, shooting at Dylan McDermott Bud Light cans, she'd be long forgotten.
Yeah, but most of the people that care about censorship are going to be free speech advocates. So, like, most people that care about Putin suppressing speech or anybody else suppressing speech are going to be like libertarians. So, like, there's probably an explanation of that. The criticism that Jordan Peterson could provide, I guess he said that Dylan Mulvaney popularized the kind of mutilation,
right,
in his view. They can affect. There's a very serious life-changing process that a person goes through, and when that's applied to a child, it can do a lot of harm to a person.
But my point still holds. I don't know how many kids were following, and you can look at the followers list. It's not like it's hidden, right? Back then, if they had 250,000 followers, and now we're on TikTok, where he might get 50-some thousand views or likes, right? I don't know how many views, but likes. I've never seen any evidence that Dylan McDermott influenced people to transition their gender. As he transitioned to her, it was documented on TikTok over the course of a year. And again, when you go back and look at the views on those TikToks, it wasn't like enormous.
Yeah, but the trends start, right? It could be, what worries people is for young kids, there to be a trend of, especially when you feel like an outsider, you feel not yourself, less than yourself, all this kind of stuff that kids feel like, that if it's becomes popular enough as a trend, you would gender transition without meaning to do that. It's just part of a trend. That's the worry they have.
That's a big stretch, right? To think that all the things that have to happen before you transition gender, right? And I'm not saying kids might identify, find it cool or, in the moment, expedient, if you will, to dress up as the other gender. Great. Who cares, right? But to go through the actual physical transition, I don't remember what the numbers were that I read, but I do remember that the latest numbers that came out in terms of transitioning were from JAMA, which is a medical association, that said from 2021 to 2022, the numbers went down. But the bigger point is there are no numbers for 2023 when post Dylan McDermott. So there's no way to know if the assertion is true, even marginally true. Now, you can easily suggest it, right? But you can say that about any social media influencer, right? Kids are dying because, it's just like when people accuse Trump of potentially influencing people to, inject bleach into their veins. You can't, that's a big old leap to say that because Trump says it, that people are going to start injecting, and then they find somebody who actually did, and it's like, oh, it must be true. This is a trend now. I'm just not buying it that there aren't enough roadblocks in the way. Now, I'm not saying it never happens, right? And to me, you should have to wait until you're 18 to actually have any surgery to transition. And if your parents approve it earlier, then you can have a conversation with your doctor. But you're suggesting that everybody in that process to go to transition a minor is corrupt. That the doctor, the sociologist, the psychologist, all the people involved, the hospital where the surgery is happening, the insurance company that's paying for it, they all have been corrupted by this trend. I just don't see that.
Well, not corrupted, but people, it's back to the DEI thing. There could be pressure, and we're
pressure to operate. So think about all the people who have to be complicit to do an operation.
But it's not complicit like evil complicit.
It is evil complicit, right? Because somebody in hospitals right now, they won't perform abortions because of state law. In Alabama, they stopped IVF treatment immediately after that ruling by that judge, right? The QAnon judge. To think that they're not going to pay attention to the possible consequences of being the hospital that does transgender, that gives doctors operating rights there, and not be aware of the risks associated with it and double check. To me, that's just insane. They're risking their entire business and livelihood and personal relationships for not checking that this 14-year-old, boy who wants to be a girl or vice versa is there waiting for surgery. That I just don't see that.
In America, yes. But if we look at humans in general, and Jordan Peterson, I think, unjustly, incorrectly brought up Auschwitz.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
But if we look, to me, World War II is a very interesting time. It does reveal a lot about human nature, and that humans are able to commit atrocities without really speaking up. The point I want to make is that when you're in this situation where everybody is around you is committing an atrocity, you can be sort of the good German, and
yeah, but
I mean, human nature is such that you can.
But
do
that is
things
in a time of war.
Yeah, but it's still human nature. It's interesting to remember that.
Of war, when you feel like there's nationalism, patriotism, everything that comes up. Russia, right? The moms of the kids sent to Ukraine who didn't come back in Russia feel certainly different than the everyday Russian who's just taking, whatever information that's available from a unified, controlled media.
Yeah. But, we should remember human nature. It's interesting.
I'm not dismissing human nature at all, but there's a difference. I think that human nature, self-preservation, influences those decisions. There's nothing about self-preservation involved in DEI, wokeness, transgenderism to compare it to Auschwitz. That's insane.
Yeah, well, that comparison is almost always, probably always is insane. Yes. Comparison between anything and the Holocaust.
I agree.
I think there's a name for that rule, but once you bring up Hitler, the conversation ends.
Goes away.
I do appreciate you bringing up Trump and Bleach as an example. So continuing on fun exchanges between you and Elon, you said if they were having Biden's last wake and it was him versus Trump and he was being given last rites, I would still vote for Biden. To which Elon replied, caricaturing you, if Biden were a flesh-eating zombie with 5 seconds to live, or upon being reelected, Earth would plunge into a 1,000 years of darkness, I would still vote for him. That's basically quoting you, but in a caricature. And you responded, while I have your attention, wanted to say thank you. Your consultants at Tesla followed up about using cost-plus drugs, about which we'll talk about, to save the company money. Truly appreciate it. And in parentheses, my limit is 300 years of darkness. Very well done, Mark.